Hello and welcome to Eco India. This week, let's look at why the practice of farming today and of the future needs a serious rethink. I'm Sanuta Raghu, coming to you from a rainy Mumbai. First, let's look at an often neglected stakeholder in agriculture, the woman farmer. Globally, more than 400 million women engage in farm work, although they lack equal rights in land ownership. This is true for more than 90 countries, including India. An organization in a region which is known to be the farmer suicide capital of the country, Eastern Maharashtra, is empowering women farmers to be key decision makers and own the land they work in. Let's see why this is a monumental first step in transforming agriculture in India.
The women of Bavi village in eastern Maharashtra are singing songs of prayer for a good harvest this year and weeding out the bad luck they've had to face in the last decade. In the region of Marathwada, Bavi is one of the harshest places in India to be a farmer. Crop failure, severe groundwater depletion, food insecurity, and uncertain cash flow are widespread problems. Its drought-prone districts are seeing an increasing number of farmer suicides every year. In 2018, the number stood at 947. Despair and hope of guaranteed returns had forced farmers like Sunit Kulkarni to concentrate on cash crops like sugarcane and soya bean. The money he earned was always plowed back into the farm for the next season. This meant there was very little to feed his family. His wife Shubhangi was determined to break the cycle.
When a man works on the farm, he only thinks about money and the big decisions that need to be taken. But a woman's approach is very different. She thinks about the home and the needs of her family, the food and the money that's required to survive.
3 years ago, Shubhangi insisted that her husband set aside 1 acre of farmland to grow fruit, vegetables and grains to meet the food needs of the family. Not only that, she insisted that the land be legally transferred to her name. For a woman to make such a demand was not only rare, but revolutionary. In India, 83% of farmland is inherited and owned by male members of the family, while women inherit and own less than 2%.
Women have always had to work as farm laborers. 70% of women farmers today do 80% of all the work in the farm, not as decision makers, but as helpers. But now they are owners too.
Godavari heads the local wing of Swayam Shikshan Prayog, a women's empowerment organization that has helped many women like Shubhangi assert themselves. The idea to empower Bavi's women came after a startling revelation in 2009. Many of them were severely malnourished.
When we conducted a medical camp to test the level of hemoglobin in the women's blood, we realized it was very low. One of the women present said that in rural families, women traditionally serve the men first and then eat whatever is left. And sometimes that's nothing at all.
तर हे ज्या का मिळत नाही त्याचा आम्ही अभ्यास केला परत.
So the one-acre model of women-led and climate-resilient farming also helps ensure women eat better. Swayam Shikshan Prayog trains women farmers to preserve seeds and grow 35 different types of nutrient-rich vegetables, grains, and tubers on their patch of land, using organic farming techniques that minimize water use. This reduces their reliance on store-bought produce. They are also trained in alternate sources of livelihoods such as goat rearing, poultry, and dairy farming. The one-acre model has improved Archana's status not only within her family but also within the community.
Actually, we need to prove our worth to ourselves if we want our families to believe in our abilities. Now that I am successful, my family consults me about every major decision that needs to be taken.
नाही, घरी जितकं पाहिजे तेवढं ठेवा. घरीमध्ये काच कसर करायचीच नाही. आपलं अन्न सुरक्षा आपल्याला करायची होती, तर त्याप्रमाणे आपल्या सर्व महिलांना हा निरोप आपल्याला द्यायचा आहे की सेंद्रिय पदाने आपलं जे निमार्क आहे, दशपर्णी आहे, तिचीच आपल्याला फवारणी करायची. मतलब मुझे बहुत प्राउड होता है.
I feel very proud. 25 years ago, I started working with these women, and saving 10 rupees was difficult. Today, women can save 500 rupees. That's a big difference. Today, they can spend most of their income on their children's education. They spend it themselves, and they don't have to ask anybody.
उनको अभी किसी को मांगने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती.
In the drought-prone Marathwada region, more than 41,000 women farmers now practice the one-acre model. Many of them are able to sell their excess produce, giving them annual savings of nearly $500 per household. But the fight for women's rights is far from over. In a deeply patriarchal society, only 10% of women own a one-acre farm, as Archana and Shubhangi now do.
Shubhangi and Archana are now among the group of women who are pushing the government to codify and strengthen their rights. But you would wonder, how do farmers in the remote Bavi village really affect you? Our next story will tell you how food production affects you and the environment you're part of.
The seeds of our food are sown in the fields of the world. All the products we buy and eat are produced by farmers. Agricultural development is also the primary fuel for economic growth and is crucial to poverty alleviation and food security. Currently, our agricultural systems are driven only by the need to feed more people and to remain profitable. The 20th century saw farming technologies like the production of genetically modified crops, the use of chemical fertilizers, and increased mechanization. This industrial agriculture model doesn't give sufficient consideration to the strain that food production puts on the environment, and this impact is huge. The agricultural sector is the second largest emitter of greenhouse gases after the energy sector. The industry is also the largest consumer of water. To make crops more resilient and harvests bigger, farmers increasingly use pesticides and fertilizers, rich in nitrogen, potassium, and phosphates. Another feature of this model is the practice of monoculture, meaning farmers focus on one or two types of crops over an entire farm or area. This is thought to be a highly productive method of farming, which is simpler to manage and boasts greater yields. But the downside to this is the degradation of soil and water sources and the destruction of natural ecosystems. Extended periods of droughts and floods, a weather cycle exacerbated by climate change, also brings crop failure, groundwater depletion, and food insecurity.
Now, Germany has had a long tradition of organic farming, but for young farmers, the hurdles are high. Land is expensive and their harvests are vulnerable. Yet, they're choosing to go back to the eco-friendly produce by rethinking the basics of farming practice with nature conservation at the forefront. Take a look.
The birds have returned to the island of Rieterwerder. The conservation area used to be so overgrown that a number of bird species didn't nest here. Tobias Kaya is out with an ornithologist. He visits the island every day to check on the bird population and the 60 cows that graze here.
Basically, this is a perfect cooperation between nature conservation and farming. We're farming cattle here on the island, but we're also conserving nature because the cattle graze on the meadows. That allows birds to breed here and provides a comfortable habitat for many species.
Thanks to the grazing cattle, the island is now a breeding ground for 10,000 black-headed gulls and many other bird species.
The cow pats are useful because cows only graze around them, so the grass grows better. So a tussock grows on the former cow pat and serves as a breeding ground for the redshank.
The cattle belong to a collective of 3 farms in northeastern Germany. The Bioboden Cooperative buys farmland across Germany. Members of the cooperative pay 1,000 euros for a share.
Members' contributions mean we, as the Bioboden Cooperative, can financially secure a farm like this one. In other words, we can take it off the market and give it to farmers who want to farm it sustainably long term.
In order to protect the soil and the groundwater, the farmers don't use pesticides and artificial fertilizers. And they grow green manure catch crops to prevent ground erosion after the autumn harvest. That also makes the ground more fertile. While conventional farming often uses hybrid seeds that need to be bought every year, farmer Stefan Decke grows crops that produce their own seeds.
Of course, we want healthy and robust crops that are also suited to local conditions and can flourish. It's getting drier and warmer. We don't want to be reliant on big corporations. We want to maintain our independence.
The organic farmers work with local customers. The potatoes grown here are sold in the farm's own shop and to nearby food startups. They go right into the pot at Lunch Vegas, just down the road. It was the first startup to move here. It prepares vegan meals for kindergartens, schools, and supermarkets. The partnership with the organic farms is a win-win situation for both.
We can buy a lot of vegetables, including potatoes, zucchini, and pumpkins. For us, business and profit isn't everything. Sustainability is important to us too, as are short value chains, buying locally sourced produce, and building something up in the region.
The startups also give the organic farmers ideas for new crops to grow. This is blue corn, a traditional Mexican crop. Daniel Müller produces organic corn tortillas.
We've had a lot of demand for blue tortillas, and of course we don't want to buy the flour or have the corn shipped across the world. Ideally, we want to grow it here instead.
idealerweise das hier anbauen.
We're currently growing it on 2 hectares of land. We had a small test phase, and it worked well. Even though it's been a dry year, we're hoping we can start harvesting some of it soon.
In Germany, melons are often imported from other continents. But the organic farmers are growing them on a test field. If they survive over the next few years without requiring additional irrigation, they'll be grown on a larger scale.
Wir sind dabei, uns darauf einzustellen.
We're adjusting to the prospect of a drier climate and hot summers. There are plenty of crops that currently only grow in southern climates that can now grow here.
Die heute aber hier wachsen.
Such experiments can mean a financial risk. But these farmers may one day be able to offer soybeans and melons grown on fields in northeastern Germany.
The onus of sustainable agriculture is as much on us as consumers as the farmers. Our decisions depend on the money we can spend on our food and also our preferences, exotic or local produce, organic or non-organic. As consumers, our decisions can make a big difference.
Every time we visit the supermarket, we make decisions that affect the environment, often unthinkingly. Household budget, habits and mood all influence what we buy. Meat and sausage is bad for the global climate. But what many don't know is that butter is even worse. Its production on an industrial scale requires massive amounts of milk and therefore vast numbers of cows, and cattle emit huge amounts of greenhouse gases. Shampoos, hand creams, even bakery products. There's palm oil in half of all supermarket products. Rainforests around the globe are destroyed to make way for the palm oil plantations. Now experts are calling for a product's ecological footprint to be clearly stated on the packaging.
Is difficult today, although it's changing. The technologies are coming out that allow us to understand the full traced value chain of what we buy, and I think that will become increasingly the case. I mean, for now, it's very clear that having more vegetables and fruits in your diet is probably a step in the right direction, but I want to make it very clear that all food can be grown sustainably, so we need to go down that road.
Pesticides and chemical fertilizers pollute soil and groundwater. However, only 1.4% of all arable land is organically cultivated, but demand is rising worldwide. In India alone, there are over 800,000 organic farmers, but organic costs more.
The expression we often use is, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. So if you're in the grocery store and you're choosing something and you're thinking, well, that organic product or whatever is more expensive, it might be today, but ultimately the path that we're headed on is going to lead to much higher prices. We need to do something today.
For example, by buying organic fruit and vegetables that's also been grown locally. Deciding what goes on the family dinner table gives everyone a chance to be part of a change for the better.
In addition to adapting to the changing climate, farmers may have to come face to face with a new kind of change in how agriculture is practiced. Robots are being developed to perform just about every activity in the farming process. How could this impact day-to-day processes, and what can farmers do to stay ahead?
What's growing here? Weeds or carrots? Here in this field, a prototype is being tested. The hope is that this technology will be able to combat weeds and improve harvests. Meet Bonnie Rob, a robot that works for organic farmer Heine Carstens.
I think I'm a visionary in this operation because I'm trying to foresee the problems we'll have in a decade, and I'm doing my best to solve them.
The farmer's already having problems finding enough employees to work his fields. Bonnie Rob could solve this labour shortage by recognising weeds and destroying them without relying on chemicals. But the robot is still at the learning stage. The farmer has brought in IT experts to help. Bonnie Rob has to be able to identify which plants are wanted and which ones aren't.
You can imagine drawing a picture with a green marker and a red marker, and then we tell him, that's a carrot and those are weeds. And later we have pictures without anything and tell the robot to find them. Where would you use the color red or green? And this is what you see in the end. It examines all the images and says, "You're a weed."
Artificial intelligence for farming. The vegetable crop is being separated from the weeds by hand. At least it's environmentally friendly. The vehicle is powered by solar panels. There's a big demand for big visions. Farming can benefit greatly from digitalization.
Our dream is to come here with a small trailer, open the door, and then 100 drones fly out and around the field and do everything automatically.
So when will drones take on the difficult tasks? How will farm jobs change and how many will remain? What will digitalization mean for food production and livestock farming? Everything depends on the new technological possibilities and how we exploit them.
More and more land is needed to grow food today, yet space is limited. And the extensive land use has led to desertification in many parts of the world. These challenges have given rise to a unique invention of soilless agriculture in urban spaces. A hyperlocal farm in Mumbai is trying to create a sustainable model of farming where the city's residents have access to freshly harvested produce.
Located in the heart of the bustling Andheri suburb, this ramshackle old industrial building gives little away to the unsuspecting passerby. But walk in and you'll discover the city's first ever climate-controlled hyper-local farm. This space is a farm for a range of fresh leafy vegetables growing smack in the middle of Mumbai. Herbivore Farms started in 2017 as an experiment on a terrace. It was the brainchild of Sakina Rajkotwala and Joshua Lewis, born out of the duo's single-minded commitment to making people more mindful of what was on their plates.
We felt like we missed a sense of purpose. We felt like, we were not adding enough to the community around us in Mumbai. We decided we'd make a trip to a place that's very much unlike Mumbai, and that was Auroville. Over there, we decided we'd start working at a farm because that would help us understand food, which was the one thing that we put into our body every day. And it was something that we needed to reconnect with and rebuild a relationship with.
Hydroponic farming uses foam and other materials as substrates for the plants. The soil is replaced by water, a method thought to hark back to the Aztec civilization of Central America. Herbivore Farms harvest more than 2,000 plants every month.
Here's where hydroponics is beneficial. In the same amount of space, you can grow almost 10 times the amount because you can grow vertically. And because of the closed loop recirculating water systems that are used to irrigate, you can use up to 90% less water. And there's the added advantage that you don't have to use pesticides when you're growing indoor. Also, if you can grow these closer to people's homes, you have less carbon miles, you can deliver fresher food.
In a radical departure from the way traditional markets work, here the aim is to offer customers a completely transparent supply chain, from production to delivery, so they can trust the hygiene and nutritional value of what goes on their plate.
When you want to eat raw food, you have to make sure that the raw food you eat is clean because you can't cook it. To make sure that the food is clean, you need to know where your food is coming from and who grew it. In local markets in Mumbai, this is not possible.
For all the many advantages of hydroponic farming, the energy costs for lighting, pumps and temperature regulations are very high. And that affects the price. But Herbivore's 150-strong clientele aren't put off. Hydroponic farming has the potential to be a model for the future, especially when it comes to feeding the world's booming urban populations.
When you eat well, you feel well. It is only when you start feeling well are you able to impact people around you and have more meaningful relationships with them. This is what life is about for us, and we feel that the world needs a lot more kind cultivators.
The choices farmers make largely depend on what each of us in society demands from them. It's up to us to choose sustainability over market forces to empower farmers. I hope today's episode will give you the power and the will to do that. We'll see you next week with yet another thought-provoking episode. Until then, goodbye.